Hello, hello to all of you, my cozy owls. Welcome back to my studio. Today we're going to do a fun little paint and chat. I'm going to be painting a magical little moment on the forest floor with some mushrooms, moss, and snails. Hi, by the way, if you're new here, my name is Melanie, and I'm the artist behind the Swimming Owl. So, a few weeks ago, I painted this little cutie, and I absolutely loved it. I was kind of just winging it when I painted this, and I was using my palette knife to do a lot of that bark texture in the moss and didn't really plan a whole lot of it out. I was just having so much fun. So I decided to do a series of these paintings, and I've got some more wooden panel canvases here that I'm going to be working with, a circle and then another square. For today, we're going to paint the square one together. And I started by putting some nice kind of peachy pink backgrounds on those panels, and while they were drying, I went ahead and varnished my little tiny square painting from a couple weeks back. And this is just some satin varnish that I have been liking putting on my little paintings like this. I do actually sell my original work in a local gallery here in my town. The gallery is called the Twisted Twig in Crystal Falls, Michigan. It's a super cute gallery and gift shop. I also help, I work with the owner 1 or 2 days a week when she needs some extra help. So it's really fun to have my artwork in there, and a lot of the time I will sell these little originals in that store. And then I will scan this and also turn it into different products for my own online shop. So that way this little painting can belong to more than just one person. So since I decided to do a series of these paintings, I decided to do a couple of thumbnails or sketches to give myself a better map of what I wanted to do. And to create these simple sketches, I am using my iPad with the app Procreate and my Apple Pencil. So I'm just making some very quick, messy sketches to give myself an idea of the composition. So right now I am showing you more of the sketch of the circular one, but we're actually going to be painting the square one together today, because after I started working on the circular one, I just felt I needed to change things up and switch to the square. I was getting a little bit frustrated with the circular painting for some reason, so I took a break from it and just did the square instead. But if you would like to see the full process of the circular painting next, let me know and I will put that together into a video as well. So not only do I really enjoy painting mushrooms and moss and just nature-themed elements to begin with, but I also know that mushrooms do really well in my part of the world, because in our town we have this festival called the Humongous Fungus. I know, kind of crazy, but it basically has created a bit of a mushroom obsession in our area, and people travel here to attend that festival, and mushroom themed content tends to go over very well. So that is one reason why I felt a little extra motivated to make these paintings before our tourist season begins here in our town. And here is a quick peek at the square thumbnails that I created. These ones are extra messy and quick, but definitely helped get my ideas down. And I liked this one here quite a bit, but then ultimately decided to go with one of these bottom versions here. And I ended up doing the one on the right with 2 little snails because I felt like it had a little more story to it. 2 little snails kind of interacting in the scene. So what you're seeing me do now is transfer my sketch over to my panel. And my iPad is in the left-hand corner up there in the screen that you can kind of see. And I'm using a Neo Color crayon to freehand my sketch onto the board. On top of my thumbnail on the iPad, I drew my kind of rule of thirds guidelines onto it. And then I also envisioned those on my wooden panel, so I could kind of get my things in somewhat of the correct position. I'm not worried about it being perfect. I'm letting there still be a little bit of organic play that happens there. But right there, I'm kind of putting in those rule of third guidelines so I can get my mushrooms to be approximately the same height and position as my sketch. And I love using these little Neo Color crayons because they're just gonna kind of wash away as I paint, and they won't really remain there unless I wanted them to, and I sprayed them with fixative, but I always like sketching with a watercolor pencil or a Neocolor crayon or something like that so that the sketch goes away. So for today's paint and chat, I'm gonna do a mixture of kind of like tips and tutorial with a little bit of chatting and then occasionally just a little bit of soft music. In my last couple of videos, everyone mentioned that they really liked that format, that kind of mixture of content. So moving forward, that is definitely what I will try to do. A mixture of tutorial and chat for sure. Let me know if you also feel that that's a good format or you enjoy that the most if you didn't let me know last time. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts and what inspires you and what you enjoy watching. I didn't show it, but the background of this panel was really simple. I used some leftover magenta that I had on my paint palette from painting the edges of that little canvas that I started with, and I didn't want it to waste, so I put it on the background of this panel, and then once that dried, I made a little bit of like this warm, glowy green color, and I very gently brushed that in all over the canvas as well, just to give myself like a really fun background to work with. And I made it a little bit darker and more green towards the bottom where I knew there would be more of like the moss and mushrooms. So you just saw me mix up a really warm, vibrant brown with some orange and purple and magenta, and now I'm adding a little bit of glazing liquid to that paint to help it go a little bit farther, also give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of gloss to it. It has been a very long time since I have painted like this. That little first painting you saw at the very beginning was the first acrylic painting I've done in a very long time. So I definitely feel like I am having to get my feet back into this and relearn some things, that those skills that I haven't used in so long, so I feel like I've sort of forgotten them or lost them. But they come back. It's a muscle that has to be stretched and you have to practice, and so I definitely make a lot of mistakes, and you're even going to see a huge mistake that I do on this tree bark in a little bit, and I'm going to show you how I didn't like what happened, and so I wiped it all away and kind of started over. And I think it's important to be vulnerable and share that kind of thing with you guys, because even as a full-time artist, I still have things that frustrate me and take a lot of problem solving to figure out. It doesn't always just come naturally and easily. It is something that we have to constantly be working on. These muscles have to be stretched and we have to practice. For instance, something I'm really having to practice right now is color mixing, and that's where a lot of what I see as the mistakes in this painting happened. On this bark, I was struggling so much with figuring out my lighting. It seemed to just come effortlessly on that first little painting. I loved the colors that I created, and then somehow I was struggling to recreate it. So this is where you're gonna see a couple different variations of this bark. I liked what was happening here and I was happy so far, and here I started playing with the palette knife again, which was the part that I loved so much on that first painting, was just putting the paint in with the palette knife and not a brush. So right here I was having a lot of fun and I really enjoyed this part. And then things got a little bit messy, which you're gonna see in just a minute. A little bit of story time for you here. Years ago, I used to paint those in-person paint night events where I would set a painting that we would paint as a class together. I would lead the class and we would finish it in like 2 to 3 hours. It was like those like paint and drink nights, and I was the teacher for those, and I did that for years. And so I just had like the painting chops to do pretty much anything that I wanted to do because I was doing it so often. But then I had to take a break from that, and I haven't gone back to do those since taking that break. And so I definitely feel like I lost my edge, so to speak, when it comes to doing things like that. So I'm trying to get back into some painting because it's something I have always loved, is making paintings like this, and it's going to take me a few to figure it out, probably more than a few. And here we go. Here goes the color that I ended up being really unhappy with. So this is some yellow ochre and some white and then some of that glazing liquid, and it just didn't come out right. This looked very much like mustard and not the color that I was hoping for. I still need to figure out how to get the color that I'm even looking for. I tried muting it down with some purple to like make it a little bit grayer, more neutralized. Even that was not really working for me. If you guys have if you're a painter and you have some tips for me, feel free to throw them below. I feel like to figure these things out, you got to get in there and play and make a mess. And that is definitely what I did. That's something that I really love about acrylic painting and just mixed media artwork in general. If you make a layer that you're not happy with, that simply means it's just not your final layer. You need to add more on top. You can continue layering until you are happy and things look the way you were hoping. I like being able to continue to layer things up and problem solve in that way. Whereas certain kinds of artwork or media aren't going to allow you to continue layering. Alright, so here it is. I am cringing so hard right now even showing this to you, but I again think it's really valuable. This got so out of hand, so I just took some paper towel and I just started kind of scraping this away. I was trying different methods, and then I ended up just getting a really large piece of paper towel and wiping it all off and sort of starting over. There was still a base layer of some of that kind of burnt sienna color, and then I just put in a little bit more paint, and now I am using my palette knife to put the darks back in with the color that I actually did like. I absolutely love how textured this ended up being. It just felt really alive and like you really were standing in that moment in the painting, like you were this little sprite on the forest floor. I just really, really enjoyed the texture and putting it in with a palette knife. Something very satisfying about that. It actually is probably all due to one of my painting professors in college that he would always say to me, you need more contrast and you need to stop being afraid of texture. So he would always make me like push the contrast in my color a lot farther than I was comfortable with, and I was always making things so blendy. And at one point this was an oil painting course that I was taking, and he made me actually use like these wax pellets mixed with my paint to make something really chunky and textured, and that is when things really shifted for me and I realized like, holy cow, this is actually a lot of fun and I really like using lots of texture in my work. So thanks to that one painting professor. He was one of the good ones. There were some that were not so great. If you'd ever like to hear stories on my art school experience, let me know. But that was definitely a great moment, a great teaching moment, and a breakthrough for me. Alright, so we're finally to some of the fun little mushrooms, and the first thing I did was kind of put in a base of light color so that I could paint over the top of it. Sometimes in acrylic painting, that's the approach I'll take. I'll put down a light color first and then build up over the top of it so that it actually can stand off of the background color, because that background color that I used was making a lot of things kind of blend into the background too much and they weren't popping off enough. And so by putting down a light layer first, it was helping me get a little bit more separation between those little subjects in the background. Another thing I can hear my painting teachers yelling at me right now is, why are you working so small and why do you have such a small brush? They constantly wanted me to use bigger brushes. Apparently that's just a habit they couldn't fully break out of me. I think I'm just working my way up to making larger paintings. It's been so long that starting small felt less intimidating. So that's why, teachers, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Don't yell at me. So if you're wondering about my reference photo for this or how I was coming up with this scene, the answer is I was looking at several different images of mushrooms and the forest floor, lighting, and I was combining or taking colors, shapes, and ideas from a lot of different materials, along with a little bit of my own imagination, and putting it all into one scene. So this is not any one single image, this is a ton of images and ideas mashed up into a little scene here. In order to find those images, I also use a combination of things. I will use places like Unsplash, which are royalty-free images that you can download or reference, things on Pinterest, and then also one of my favorite things to do is use my own images that I've taken from my own adventures, nature walks, my garden, etc. Being able to use your own images just makes things even more personal and meaningful to you. All right, so a couple of things I want to mention here. First, that mushroom in the foreground that I just finished, so pleased with how that one turned out. I loved the colors and the textures and the shape. That one just, perfect. Next thing, notice the gloss on the tree trunk. That is thanks to that glazing medium that I added to my paint. And I added it at like a 50% paint, 50% medium, and I just really like the sheen that it gives your paint, that almost like fresh from the palette look. So it might be something you might enjoy experimenting with, is adding a little bit of that medium to your paint. And you can do it at different ratios. It doesn't have to be like 50%. You can do a little bit less if you want it to be a little less intense. All right, next little topic are these snails. I felt like these snails definitely needed a little bit more love and work, but overall I'm happy with them. They definitely add a really fun bit of wonder and story to the painting. I did not give myself like perfect guidelines to follow. I just gave myself a very rough shape and then I free-handed them in with my paintbrush, which is how I tend to like to work when I paint. The only downside to painting like that is occasionally the subject that you're painting may end up getting a little bit larger than you were intending because it has to get a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger as you're fixing mistakes. But I'm totally okay with that, and just figuring it out as you go. I think it also helps increase my confidence with painting, is to just get in there and play and make it and not worry about creating a perfect sketch to go from when it's something fairly organic like mushrooms and snails and tree bark. Like, you don't need to draw in a bunch of detail, just get in there and start painting it. As I'm finishing up some of these last details on the snails, I'm starting to wonder, like, what could I put this cute little painting or the other little paintings on as well for products? Like, I'm gonna sell the original, but what would be fun to put this painting on? Maybe some square greeting cards could be kind of cute. I could do stickers. Obviously, art prints would be the easiest or most obvious choice to just turn it into a little square art print. But if you have anything that you think would be kind of fun to see, you could let me know below. I would appreciate your thoughts and ideas on that. It's always kind of fun to see your artwork turned into multiple different products and things, and to be able to hold your art on other items. It's always rewarding. Speaking of holding your art, are you creating something along with me today? I'm curious, what are you up to right now? Are you just watching, kind of like art candy for the eyes, or do you have some of your materials out and are you creating along with me? I think it'd be really cool to know what you're up to if you're open to sharing. And if you're feeling shy and you don't want to type anything out, you can always just leave me a little emoji below and I'll try to figure out your clue. So moving on to one of my other absolute favorite things in the world, which is moss. I love moss so much, I'm obsessed with it. Painting it is a little bit tricky. I struggle with creating the exact colors that I want, which is probably because I don't have a lot of acrylic paint right now. The paint that I am using, guess how old it is? I am almost embarrassed to admit I'm pretty sure some of these paints are like 20 years old, some are maybe older. Yep, so confessions of an artist right there for you, which means I also have very limited colors because obviously I don't have all of the colors that I started out with 20 years ago either. So that can make it kind of frustrating when you're trying to make certain colors and you have to make it with things that probably weren't the right answer to begin with in the first place. But if you like painting moss and you have like a favorite combination of colors for making it, let me know below. Please don't keep those secrets. I need to know how you make the perfect mossy green color. Alright, all that being said, I had so much fun making this little magical forest floor moment painting with you today. I hope you enjoyed painting or creating with me and you enjoyed this video. Here is a final look at how it all turned out. Again, the original is going to be for sale here in my town, but I will turn this into some other products as well on my website soon. Thank you for being here, and until next time, happy art making!